How's it going? So, this is going to be the first of many series. Hopefully, my goal here is to create some videos that are going to be a little bit easier to allow new users or maybe people who are struggling to kind of better tackle modding. So, welcome to Warframe Made Easy. That's what I'm planning on having the series be focused around. So, one thing I'm starting to notice with a lot of my viewers and even people in the Discord who are coming back or who kind of come back and forth between this game is a constant struggle with modding, whether it be between Warframe or the hundreds of weapon choices, or even for your companions between Sentinels, drones, or the Kubers or Kavats. So one of the things I kind of wanted to tackle is kind of simplifying your expectations of understanding how mods work. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of in-depth explanations. Eventually, when you get the hang of modding, there are a lot better in-depth YouTubers that are going to be out there, such as MH Blackie or some other ones. I don't have like a full list to be able to provide at this time, but what we're going to go ahead and do is kind of better look at mods and how they work. So we're going to go ahead and tackle just a standard Excalibur, because generally speaking, I don't use this Excalibur anymore now that I have Excalibur Umbra. So generally speaking, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to remove all these mods, so that way we can start off on a basic level. So with mods, they have what are referred to as polarity and cost. So you have your mod capacity to the top left, and you have the cost of the mod located on the top right of the mod. Now, as you level up mods, they will cost more. As you can see, they vary in cost. But don't let the cost scare you, because there are ways to making sure that you can fit a majority, if not all of the mods you're wanting to on your frame. And that kind of goes back to what polarity is. So polarity is kind of like matching the symbol with the same symbol. So you have several different polarities. We're going to have the Madurai polarity. Some people refer to it as a Y. And then you're going to have the Vizarin polarity, which I call a D polarity. Then you're going to have the Naramon polarity, which I just refer to as the line. Then you have Zenuric, which is the 2 dots. Umbra, which is something you'll, depending on where you're at in the game, if you haven't done the quest for it, you won't have to worry about this, but they are a unique one. And then you have what's referred to as the universal, any polarity, which you do have the availability to now utilize Omniforma. They are brand new into the game, and they basically can mimic any polarity slot minus the Umbra polarity. Now, with that being said, your Excalibur may not look like mine, and that's because I have, as you can see, this indicator on the top right next to the name, and what your current rank for the Warframe is will indicate how many Forma you have put into said frame. So I have put in 3 Forma into my original Excalibur in my time in playing Warframe. So yours may not look the same, but that does mean that I have the availability to have better or more mods on there. Now, with that being said, we'll go ahead and refresh the stats. So Excalibur is one of the first 3 frames that you can pick. I like him. It was my first pick when I first started off in 2016. But some people prefer Mag, some people prefer Volt. But generally speaking, every frame is going to have their abilities, their own passives, and that's how you're going to start focusing initially when you're playing the game, is what I recommend doing. Now, I do want to state that I really encourage you to play around with your modding and your how you want to focus on your abilities. Not everyone plays the same Warframe the same way, so don't be afraid to experiment. Now, you're not going to have a lot of the mods at the beginning that you see that I have. A lot of them are going to be kind of standard or earning or Maybe you're going to get lucky and you have friends that play, or maybe you'll tune into my Twitch channel, Leo the Fallen, and you'll be available to be given some of the mods that you're needing to start off with to make your journey into this world a little bit easier. But one of the things that you want to focus on is you have your health, your shield, your armor, and your energy pool. I really don't worry about sprint speed personally. Then you have your ability stats, which is your duration, your efficiency, your range, and your strength. Now, 3 of those should technically speak for themselves, but we'll kind of go over them nonetheless. Duration is going to be a matter of how long an ability or a function of an ability lasts. So, for example, with Excalibur, his Radial Blind has a duration function, and at base, it's 15 seconds. And what this does is when you activate it, for 15 seconds, the enemies that are within range are blinded, opening them up for easy attacks. So they won't attack, they'll stay stunned for 15 seconds. So if you increase your duration, you'll increase the how long they stay stunned. Efficiency is what allows you to cut the cost of how much energy you're spending per activation of an ability. So, for example, this ability costs 50 energy. That means I would be able to activate it a total of 6 times with a base energy value of 150. So, I'm sorry, that's not correct. 3 times. Bad at math. But that's okay. So you'd be able to activate Radial Blind 3 times with the current value. Now, if you add mods that increase the efficiency, it lowers the overall cost. So drain right now is 50. We're going to use what's referred to as Streamline. Where is that bad boy? Streamline gives a 30% ability efficiency, and it's a Neuromon polarity. So if I throw it right here, you can see that it takes away 9 from my capacity of 60. Now, I'm going to have a higher capacity than most because of my mastery rank, but your mod capacity will increase with your mastery rank as well. So don't mind where my total is at, mind where yours is. But the initial cost is 9. Whereas if we move it here, it only costs 5 capacity. Now, that's with the polarity and the capacity cost. Going back to the efficiency value, so Streamline gives you a 30% ability efficiency. As you can see, it adds the 30% to your stats. Now, if we come down here, instead of costing 50 energy per activation, it will cost 35. Now, efficiency just doesn't affect the drain of it. It will also affect items that have a drain per second. So Excalibur's 4th ability is referred to as Exalted Blade. For all you anime fans out there, that might be just up your alley. But as you can see, it has a drain and a drain per second. So what winds up going on is when you activate this ability, it is going to initially cost 7.5 energy. Or I'm sorry, 17.5. Well, when you activate it, it will remain active until you deactivate it. But during the duration of its activation, you will lose 1.75 energy per second while keeping its activation. Not per use, just while it's activated. Now, I will say that efficiency isn't the only thing that affects the drain, at least last I recalled. So we'll go ahead and remove Streamline, and we'll move on to something like duration. So duration is, as we explained earlier, it basically allows an ability to stay active longer. But unless they've changed it, let's find it. Looking for continuity. Where'd it go? Oh, you know what I could be doing? Searching. So if you're not able to find the mod you're looking for, you can do one of two things. You can type in the name manually, or you'll be available to type in what you're looking for. So we're looking for duration personally. So I want to bring up any mods that affect duration. We'll type in partial of the word. Ta-da! Any mods that have a duration in the context of it will then be populated instead of just the singular mod. So we have continuity, we have narrow-minded, we have augur message, we have fleeting expertise. Now notice how that one says minus ability duration. So just keep in mind, you know, it's going to bring up anything with that word. So where are we looking for? I don't have a level continuity anymore, but that's okay. I can max one out for this example. So continuity at base, as you saw. Where'd it go? Did it reset it? Yes, it did. Let's bring that back. So continuity at max costs 7. At a base value, it only costs 2. So as you saw me level it up, every time you increase it, it's going to show you what the value increases to, not only here, but the percentage of the mod. So every rank adds 1, as you saw. But we're going to come back here. So continuity adds that 30% to duration, which brings our 15 seconds up to a 19.5, almost 20 seconds for blinding, but the drain per second is affected. We're at 1.92, whereas if we take it off, you have a 2.5. So there are some abilities where duration does also act as a small form of efficiency. So they haven't fixed it. So that's something you can keep in mind, but that's more technical stuff. So at a base value, you want to keep in mind, again, we have polarities, which help cut the cost of capacity. We have the cost, look at it on the top right, and what your maximum on the top left is. Now, I will say one thing that you can do is, so my modding capacity is 60, and this slot right here is important. So this is referred to as a aura slot. So aura has a lot of different mods that you can use. Some are great for focusing on stats based on what a frame does. Some are just overall good for teammates. One of the first aura mods you're going to get is called Dreamer's Bond. It's great because not only does the squad, including you and your teammates that are playing with you, whether they're random or friends, they receive a 0.3 energy regeneration and a 1.5 health regeneration per second. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but there's ways to kind of boost and bolster things like that. So we'll stick with this one since a majority of you are probably going to have this at a beginning value. Now, if you keep an eye on the top left for my capacity from 60, it adds 7. So whatever the maximum cost of your aura mod is, it is going to add that on top of your total capacity. And then, again, if you level up the mod, it will also level up its stats and your capacity for the aura slot. This slot is referred to as your Exilus slot. That's something that you'll start using way later in the game. So you don't really want to focus too much on this. For now, focus on your aura and your modding. So now that we have a aura mod on here, we'll stick with the Dreamer's Bond. Personally, the mods that I would recommend for Excalibur, for his aura slot, if you're beginning, you can do Dreamer's Bond. If you're available to receive it or get it or earn it, I do recommend using Corrosive Projection. But the biggest one is going to be Steel Charge. So Steel Charge is great because the squad receives 60% melee damage. Now, why do you think that's great? Well, the thing is, Excalibur's abilities are melee based, so his slash dash, his radial javelin, but his exalted blade counts as a melee. So while you have it active, you can gain 60% damage increased while utilizing his exalted blade. So traditionally, I would use Steel Charge, but for today, we're going to stick with Dreamer's Bond. Now, the next thing that people are going to focus on again is, how do I mod it? Well, that's going to depend on your playstyle. So, slash dash allows you to basically go forward, and it's a one-trick pony, if you will. You basically activate it, he slides forward, and if there's additional enemies, he'll sometimes go towards them. So this has drain range and chain range, which again, if there's multiple enemies, depending on how close the enemies are, it'll chain the ability within that one activation. His radial blind, which we covered. His radial javelin is focused on radius and damage. And then his exalted blade, which is some people will refer to these as their ults, but it's the fourth ability. He summons a blade, and it's focused on damage, blind radius, and blind duration. Now, some of you are thinking, why is there a blind duration with radius on there? Fun fact, when you're using exalted blade and you do a slide slash, he will actually do a radial blind without you actually having to activate it. Now, it may not be as potent as radial blind itself, but it is a passive that you can use while having exalted blade already activated. So you can slide swing, and it's something you'll activate. Now, personally, I like Excalibur's first two abilities, and then his I do like his first two and his fourth the most. So I don't traditionally focus on any worrying about radial javelin. You can activate it here and there, but generally speaking, you're gonna kind of focus on slash dash, radial blind, and exalted blade, because exalted blade does pair well with both of these when you have them activated. But again, that's deeper math. We're gonna keep this simple. So, because exalted blade is the end goal, when you reach level 10, you'll unlock this ability. What we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna stick with some simple mods. So I'll start off with some beginner mods. So flow is really nice. Flow is something that you can earn and increases your max energy pool. So as you can see, as I hover over this, there's a little green arrow that shows energy up. We're going to go ahead and activate add flow. So it gives me 100% energy max, bringing me up to a total of 300. Now, while I am discussing this and while you're watching this video, you're probably wondering what these are too. Ignore those for now. Your goal is to focus on simple mods, and then as you learn and feel more comfortable about the game, you can then start focusing on your Exilis and your arcane slots. But we're going to increase flow. Now, we've talked about duration. What about strength? Increasing the ability damage output. That's where ability strength comes in. Again, that one's pretty straightforward. So, at a base value, we haven't done anything to affect the actual stats. So the damage deals slash, impact, and puncture. As you can see on those, as the icons are down there, those are going to always stay the same for the damage types that the weapon can inflict. So we're going to go ahead and add on Intensify. So Intensify is going to add 30% damage to our ability strength. So what's that bring our damage up to? 325. Awesome. So from there, now we're going to kind of go back to efficiency. With Excalibur, you do activate his abilities kind of continuously. So you're going to constantly probably be swinging a lot with your Exalted Melee. You may proc Radial Blind so that way you can start taking out enemies and not getting damaged. Or you may like to do Slash Dash because it looks cool and feels cool. But it is fairly powerful. So you're going to be activating these abilities, and every time you activate it, you're going to have 25 for the cost, 50 for the cost, and you're going to be losing energy as you keep this activated. So let's get some efficiency thrown on here. And the efficiency mod that you go look for at the beginning of the game on wanting to earn is called Streamline. Now, if you've had some issues where you don't have friends that have this mod, or you don't have friends that you can play with or farm with, or maybe you're struggling getting the mod to drop because they are a random chance, you can hit up my stream at Leo the Fallen on Twitch. And I do give a lot of Prime stuff away for free. If you're newer to the game, you don't want to focus on too much Prime stuff at the beginning. But I do also give out a lot of mods. So if I have spare mods, or if you're needing somebody, some help regarding farming or kind of someone to talk to, feel free to check out my stream. You'll also be available to join our Discord with a lot of members that are growing in it. But Streamline is going to add on to that efficiency. Now, from there, I do like a bit of range on my Excal. And the reason for range is because Radio Blind, Slash Dash, and Exalted Blade. So we want to look for some range. So again, you're not going to have these other mods. Majority of the time, you may not earn these very quickly. Stretch is probably going to be the first mod you get. So Stretch is really nice. So Stretch adds that 45% range. So now, the radius is 36.25 meters. The chain range increased from 7 to 10.15. And then the blind radius is now 7.25. Awesome. Well, the next thing that we're going to focus on is going to be duration. Because again, keeping that blind radius up is very important. But as an additional buffer, it will lower the cost of the drain per second. So as we can see again, right now, with just a 30% increase to efficiency, we have 17.5 in drain for the initial activation, 1.75 for the drain per second. We will go to our continuity mod, and that adds a 30% duration. Let's check out our Exalted Blade. I lowered the drain per second by a little bit, not a lot, but the blind duration went up to 7.8 for Exalted Blade, and the duration went up to 19.5 for the Radio Blind. So, we're doing pretty good as far as the stats go for a base leveling. Now, these are all ability focused. What about survivability? I'm glad you asked. So, that's going to go towards our health, our shield, and our armor. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if you have shield, armor does not imply how much damage reduction you're taking while your shields are active. So you're more than welcome to read these kind of things, but there are, again, deeper explanations on things that can affect you past your shield. Excalibur's not a very shield-focused frame, in my opinion, so you traditionally want health and armor. So the initial shield, armor, and health mods that you're going to get is called Redirection, Vitality, and Steel Fiber. Go ahead and max that out. It's been a while since I've used some of these base mods. So, again, I'm not a big fan of Redirection on Excalibur because I don't think he needs a lot of shields, because if you're outputting your damage, you won't take as much damage in theory. So, again, if I add this on by itself, it's going to cost 14. But because I have the polarity slots that match, so basically D to D, D to D dot D to do do, had to do it, sorry. Steel Fiber now cost 7. Great. And then we want some of that health. So you can see how it shows our stats before and after. So his initial health was 370. Now it's boosted to 740. His initial armor was 240. It's boosted to 480. And again, your shield will not your armor does not stop dictate how much damage reduction you're getting on your shield, only your health. So once your shield goes, then your armor kicks in helping guard how much damage you're taking for your health. Now, again, you may not have the availability to use all of these initially. May take you some time, but that's okay. What's going to go on now is I have one free slot available, given what I've been able to mod for Excalibur. We're going to ignore that for now, because at a base, we have Slash Dash, Radio Blind, and Exalted Blade ready to go. Now, I'm not going to use any of my weapons during this time frame, because weapon modding is kind of the same expectation. There are things that you want to focus on, and there's a lot more that's going to go into these as you play, but it's going to carry over some of the same expectations, except you're only going to focus on some of the functionality. So we'll cover that here shortly. Let's take Excalibur out for a test drive. Oh, haven't talked to him in a while. Let's post a message. All right. So, let's take Excalibur out for a spin. And remember, if you're needing assistance, check out my channel at Leo the Fallen. You can find me on Twitch, traditionally live Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Central Time through 1:30 a.m. Central Time. Now, generally, a lot of you guys are going to kind of begin. These levels on Earth aren't necessarily considered high. You can see a majority of these are going to go towards maybe minusing the Plains of Edelon. You can see like a maximum of 16, except for this. This isn't something that you'll get to immediately. But you can kind of see where a majority of the standard levels start off around 16. So, let's go ahead and see how that works out. Let me go ahead and send this message real quick. So let's find a survival. I don't know if there is one. Let's see. There's the Infested Defense, which is a really good start-off spot for farming out some stuff. We have Exterminates, Capture, Interception. So, no survivals there. Let's move on to Venus. Venus is another pretty quick area that you may find yourself located in. And the enemy range is still, again, anywhere between 13 here and there. So, it's Assassination, which is a boss fight. Sabotage, Survival. So here we go. The enemy type is Infestation. And they'll range from 8 to 18. Plus, there's also a bonus. So there's a 10% resource drop chance, as well as 10% affinity from kills and 5% affinity from rifles. Affinity being your XP. Let's go ahead and get that loaded. So, with that being said, looks like we have some low levels here. We have 2 Master Rank 2s, but that's okay.
The infested are releasing toxic spores into the area. The emergency life support I am delivering is your only chance for survival.
So, like I said, I'm not going to use my weapons. We're going to focus on the abilities. So, you can immediately see that the first ability I activated, slash dash, how it chained the enemies.
Life support has
Pretty
been
good.
replenished.
I do have my little sentinel around here, so he might do a lot of killing, so I can't control that. But you saw how the slash dash worked. Awesome sauce. Well, why not find a horde of enemies and activate our blind? Opens it up for finishers. Here they are. And if you have a companion, you know, it's going to be one of those things where they'll put in their own effort, but you can kind of see how at a simple base, it's not too hard on these lower levels. You'll be able to farm out what you need. You can kind of get everything going. And then we'll use his fourth, or his third. Radial Javelin. They're lower levels, so the amount of strength that we're outputting is pretty good for what we have. And as you can see, though, my energy starts draining a lot quicker.
Activating it will buy you more time. Life support activated.
Now, what we're going to go ahead and do is activate our Exalted Blade. So as I said, when you activate it, it's a one-time activation, and then from there, what winds up going on is there is a drain to it. So you can see it just by me standing here on the bottom right of the screen, the energy is ticking down. 171, 170, 169, 168, 166, things like that. So when I swing with it, it doesn't take additional energy. It's just a drain per second. So what's going to wind up going on is you could just activate this, or you activate it and then you just treat it like your melee. Now, I didn't get to the part where I explained that because Excalibur has a summonable weapon, it's referred to as an exalted weapon. So, exalted weapons have their own mod set.
Life support on the way.
So, depending on how you mod your exalted weapon, depends on how much damage that one is going to do as well. But again, just at base value. I think I forgot to unmod it, but that's okay. At base value, it is doing all right. And then, like I said too, if you slide in melee, you get your radial, your own mini radial blind. Now, one of the cool things about Excalibur's ability is with his Exalted Blade, he's not just meleeing. You can actually see that there are energy blades getting slashed out as well that have range to them, which is another important part of having a little bit of range on him sometimes at the beginning. So you can actually keep the enemies at bay. Again, hence why you want to focus on armor and health, because if they can't get close to you to deal damage, then you don't need to worry about your shields. And if they do get close to you, you can activate your second ability to blind them, or do the mini one. Now, I will say that when you activate the mini one,
Life support incoming.
it does suck up more energy, because you are technically activating your second ability. So you're paying half the cost of the second ability when you do this. And as you can see, it takes up a decent chunk of your energy, so do be careful. Alrighty. So as we get our energy back,
additional life support has arrived.
and then from here we kind of just survive. So we can see how these stats are taking into effect on a lower level like this.
Life support activated.
So what we're going to go ahead and do now is, now that we're at 5 minutes, we're going to go ahead and leave. Let's go to a higher difficulty area and see how Excalibur handles himself. Fun fact, you can technically use his first ability as a travel ability.
Tenno, prepare for life support. Another job well executed.
Okay. And see, we had an Excalibur, we had a Wukong, and a Valkyr. So you're going to meet a variety of people playing a variety of different things. And that's okay. So let's go here. So as I kind of explained, Exalted weapons, once you hit level 10 for Excalibur, you'll be able to mod your Exalted Blade. This one was pre-modded, like I said. I have some heavier stuff on here. So let's go ahead and wipe that off. Exalted Blade itself is its own stance mod, so you can't change that. So we'll go ahead and give this over a look before we move on to... Let's go to level 30 enemies and see how we're doing. So, with your Exalted Blade, you're going to have Slash, Puncture, and Impact. You have a crit chance and a crit multiplier with status chance. You'll have your attack speed, your range, your slam attack, your slide attack, your combo duration, and your follow through. I myself personally try to keep things simple. I don't worry about combo duration or follow through. I don't get super technical like that. Slide attack and slam attack, that will increase as you kind of mod things. Attack speed really just depends on how you feel about the weapon, and this is going to carry over to normal melee modding as well. And your range is going to be dependent on, again, how many enemies you're attacking, not necessarily how far you're attacking. Although, if you're using things like pole arms and things like that, sometimes range does impact how far you can melee somebody from where you're at. With your Exalted Blade, you're going to kind of focus on its innate damage of crit chance, slash, and things of that nature. So, one of the original mods that you should wind up earning fairly on is going to be called Serration. Let me find that bad boy. I'm sorry, it's primed, it's not prime. It's pressure point. That's the word I'm looking for. Which, again, I'm not finding. So what do we do when we can't find something? Search for it. Boom, pressure point. It's a bronze mod. And again, our polarity is a Y. I already have a polarity of a Y. Let's go ahead and slap that on there. So it gives me 120% melee damage. Now, there are a few things, again, I don't get super technical, but I will explain that there is a base damage and status damage. So base damage doesn't, increasing your base damage isn't always going to be the best, but it really, again, depends on your weapon and its focus. So for this one, we will do a base damage because you can see our total goes up to 747. our puncture, our impact increases, and so does our slash. Now, if you remember, the first ability does slash damage, the third ability does slash damage, and technically, your Exalted Blade does imply slash, puncture, and impact. So, with that being said, let's move on to that. So, you may or may not get some additional mods early on, like Toxin, attack speed, critical damage, things of that nature, or slash. So if you do, more power to you. If not, that's okay. You can slowly earn them. But for this, normally you should get Organ Shatter fairly early on. So we'll increase our crit damage, aka critical damage. So as you can see, it doesn't have critical damage as a critical multiplier. So basically that's your critical damage. It's multiplied by a certain percentage based off your crit chance. But if your crit chance isn't that high, there's no point in increasing your critical damage. So because we're applying critical damage, let's find some critical chance. So we can type in crit, and it'll bring up any mods we have regarding critical damage or critical chance. So True Steel is going to be the bronze version of your critical chance. We'll want to get that applied. So it brings our crit chance from a 15% to a 33%. So if you hover over critical chance, it says right here, values over 100% have a chance at becoming bigger crit hits. Meaning you can start seeing orange and deeper red colors. Anything closer to 200 or above, you'll have super critical hits, which will be red crits. So those will have that critical multiplier applied to it. So we already have the base stuff that we would add. Now, generally speaking, oops, sorry about that. What's going to go on is these are just some simple mods. How else are we going to modify this blade? Well, that's where elemental damage comes into play. Things like toxic, cold, electric, slash, things like that. Now, you may not get these mods right off the bat. That's okay. It is preferred to have the gold versions for what we call the dual mods, where it increases the stat and status chance. But that's okay. We'll go ahead and start off with something simple. Like, where was it? You might get Shocking Touch early on. Cool. Let's add that on there. Now, adding just electric damage by itself can be kind of good, can be kind of bad. Now, there's heat, electric, there's cold, and then there is toxic. Now, those are the 4 base elements. When you combine them, though, that's where it gets kind of interesting. So, if we combine toxic with shock, we get corrosive. So, as it says here, corrosive will temporarily remove up to 80% of the target's armor value with multiple stacks. Meaning, if they have corrosive applied multiple times, they'll get armor stripped. Now, not all enemies have armor. You can identify that by their health bars. A yellow bar is traditionally an armored enemy. There are some, what's the word I'm looking for? There are some one-offs where that's not always the case, but again, keeping it simple, yellow means armor, red means health, blue means shield. Blue and red means shield with health. So corrosive is pretty cool. I myself tend to take a fancy towards between corrosive and viral. And viral is pretty cool because what happens is if you mix cold and toxic, you get viral. Now, what does viral do? Viral increases damage to health, and this can bypass armor sometimes, and it can do up to 325% multiple depending on the stacks for a short duration. Awesome. So let's go ahead and just take this base value into effect. Now, our status isn't necessarily huge because, again, we don't have anything increasing the status chance. So let's see what we can't do to fix that without those gold mods. Status duration. So you should get melee prowess, which is status chance. It's going to bring our status from 15 to 28.5. So you can see how the slash has a 7.1%, a viral has an 18.3. So let's go ahead and take this on to the next mission. Let's go a little bit higher. So we weren't dealing with a lot of high level enemies there, because again, as you start going higher, you're going to see the enemies kind of jump in difficulty depending on where you're at in your story. So let's double that. So we'll go to Mars. Does Mars have, here we go. We have 20. We have 12. That's a different mission for a different time. Let me find a survival. There we go. Anywhere between 10 to 20. Now, what we're going to go ahead and do, though, is we're going to go ahead and do this on solo. Because, again, we want to see how we're doing damage-wise, not we as a team are doing damage-wise. So let's go ahead and start Wahiba on Mars. We'll see how we survive for 5 minutes. Now, I have a companion. I'm not going to be using my primary, secondary, or my official melee. I'll only be focusing on my ability kills to the best of my what I can.
Set off the alarms to start. A steady stream of toxic spores is being released into the area. Hold on. Emergency life support is inbound.
So I'm going to activate my 4th right off the bat. So we can see that I'm able to damage them from a distance. And we're doing some pretty good damage.
Look for personal life support modules dropped by fallen enemies.
So you can see how it's applying the viral on some of them. You'll have to kind of, it's hard to kind of pay attention when you're playing and then seeing if it's proccing or not. But that little gas mask
Life
is gas.
on the way.
And that's being applied by my companion. See if we can't find a better area to farm. There we go. You can kind of see how the viral sometimes gets procced. It's not a guarantee because, again, our status chance isn't very high, but it can happen. And as you can see, too, our energy is starting to run low because of that drain. So if these enemies don't drop energy, it's kind of hard to keep that ability consistently activated. And one of the things that I will say is, like, if you feel like you're not getting enough
support
energy,
incoming.
don't be afraid to turn off your exalted weapons and focus on other uses. Like, again, if I'm not getting the kind of kills I need, I'll let my aura mod give me a little bit of energy, and then I can use my first ability. Obviously, you'll be using your primary, your secondary, and your other melees as
Additional
well.
life support has arrived.
But just with the use of the abilities, you can kind of see, just with some simple modding, how well you're doing against these kind of enemies. Granted, these are infested. They're nothing difficult. They're straight health. So I will say that generally speaking, when you start looking into in-depth builds, you'll probably look at a lot of higher end mods that you'll slowly earn over time or need to complete the campaign to acquire or things of that nature. But if you take your time and actively ask questions, maybe tune into the channel on Twitch or join our active Discord, as well as even, just asking simple questions. Make sure that when you ask your questions, that you really take into consideration the answers you're being provided. One of the biggest difficulties that players do experience when it comes to modding is they will be provided feedback. Now, sometimes that feedback is a little too much, but they don't apply that feedback. So take these simple things into account, and when you feel like you're ready to move on to the more difficult, or as I like to refer to it, the Warframe math, do your research. You have sources like Warframe Wiki, which is really great for finding out how, things that the game won't actually tell you, such as like ability passives or how certain abilities work with others, where to get mods or what the best drop chances are, things like that. So you can kind of see, like, I'm doing fine with just the stuff by itself.
Extraction is available if you need it.
So
The spores have almost
that first 5 minutes,
the atmosphere.
pretty simple. So we're going to go ahead and head out.
Spore saturation is nearing critical mass. After that point, no amount of life support will save you.
With 3% on the time.
Another job well executed.
So that's kind of a simple introduction, at least into mods made simple for frames. Excalibur is probably a little bit more complicated to mod than Volt or Mag as beginner frames. But again, if you're looking for any assistance with those kind of things, you can always go ahead and take your time and look at them. There are a lot of frames, and every 3 months we're getting more frames and more primes added into the game. So take your time and enjoy playing around with them, learning them, and seeing if they're to your playstyle. But if you're ever needing help, again, check out my channel on Twitch at Leo the Fallen. I'll be live traditionally Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Central Time till 1:30 a.m. And with that being said, I'll catch you guys on that next video.